everyone. Welcome to the Stream of Art podcast, where we chat openly about creativity, personal growth, and building a career in the arts. I'm Michelle Monette.
And I'm Robyn Lester.
And this is episode 33. And today we will be talking about acceptance and managing expectations. But first, as always, we do a little check-in where we each share a win, a fun or interesting thing, and then something we appreciate. Do you want to kick us off there, Robyn?
I forgot to do this.
Well, it's going to be improv. Isn't this what your acting class is teaching you?
Oh, well, here. Okay, well, there. This will just be my fun win and interesting thing altogether. My acting class wrapped up, but I registered for the second level of the acting class, and I registered for the improv sessions.
Whoa, look at you go.
Oh, man. And improv, so on our last acting class, and I signed up for improv before the last acting class. And then we did improv in the last acting class. And I was like, I am terrible. Because the one thing I'm really good at is overthinking everything. And the one thing that there's just not really room to do in improv is overthinking everything. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how this goes, but it'll be good. Like, I'm looking forward to just being able to practice just trying. And letting go of worrying about the result or worrying about what people think or whatever, and just like trying to act more instinctually versus like thinking through every single step before doing something. So we'll see how that goes. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, please do. I feel so in awe of you doing that, because that to me just sounds like my nightmare, because I'm very much the same way. I want to, like, give me a second. Like, let me think about this. I need to think about what I might do and what the possible outcome will be and what other people will think of me if I say this thing versus this thing versus this thing. Will they think I'm good? Please think I'm good. So yeah, the fact that you're really like leaning into that, you know, the forcing yourself to really be more intuitive is really inspiring.
It helps that like I know the instructor now, and he's a good guy, and I feel comfortable around him, and he's really good at kind of fostering that open environment and that like positive environment within the class too. So like that helps as well. That's a big part of it. I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to take that risk if the instructor was unkind or judgmental or whatever, right? Like that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, a teacher can really make or break a class for sure. Yeah, awesome. So I have a bunch of wins, but you got mad the last time I tried to sneak in another little one, so I'm just going to pick one.
No. You can do it. I'll allow it.
No,
you just need to ask my permission first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have, I guess there's some sort of a form I have to fill out.
Yeah.
It has to be notarized.
Did I not send you that Google form that you need to submit before? Oh.
Yeah, okay. I'll do that next time. And then I'll do I have to do one for each win I want to talk about? Okay.
And I'm going to ask for the same information too, like first name, last name, email address.
Do I have to write it out in triplicate?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, no, but my I think biggest win is actually one that's relevant to something I was struggling with that I talked about probably months ago now. I finished writing lyrics for that song that I was having a hard time writing lyrics for.
Sweet.
It took me a really long time. Like, I just finished it this last week, but I'm glad I stuck with it. It was one of those songs I just knew there was potential there, and I think it is probably going to end up on my album. I think it might be the closer.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm really glad I stuck with it. I'm really glad I didn't stick with the first lyrics I came up with. I had just started writing. I mean, this is just par for the course when it comes to writing lyrics. You're just at first just putting down something. Part of it is just trying to figure out what you want to say specifically. So I had this general idea, but I was trying to figure out what lens I wanted to look at it through. And just the first one I picked just wasn't sitting well. And I just knew it. And it was the fight within myself of wanting to have the lyrics be done so that I could just track vocals and get into the really fun production side of things where I can really layer stuff up and do the backing vocals and do guitar parts and stuff. Like, I love that part. But I'm like, I forced myself to be patient and to take some time away. Actually, I stepped back from working on lyrics for a little while just to give myself some space. And then I came back and I fought for these lyrics. Like, I'll have to show you my lyric notebook at some point for this song. I think there were like 12 pages of just stuff as I'm trying to find these lyrics. So I'm really happy with the ones I have now. There are a couple of lines that I suspect I'll probably change. They feel very much like placeholder lyrics, and I'm fine with that. Like, that's, again, part of the lyric writing process is that as you continue to work on a song, sometimes you'll get an idea of how a lyric can be changed to be better. Like, this happened when I was tracking the scratch vocals. I went, oh, this word can actually be this word, and it makes way more sense. And sometimes you just need to be in a different headspace to figure that out. So yeah, but I'm glad it's done for now is what I'm calling the lyric portion of that song. And my fun or interesting thing, so actually is tied to lyric writing. I have this book called Songwriting Without Boundaries, which is awesome. And it's just a series of challenges. So you have 4 14-day challenges, and they're just like different kinds of writing challenges. So right now I'm doing object writing, where I either have to write about a what, a who, a when, or a where, and it's all sense-bound writing. So I have 3 different time sessions each day. There's a 5-minute session, a 10-minute session, and then a 90-second session, sort of like a sprint. And then I'm given prompts. So the prompt might be, one of the prompts yesterday was a bench in the city or something. And so you're trying to write about that using as many of your senses as you can to really paint this vivid picture. So that's been really fun just to get back into that. I've gone through this book twice before, although I've never actually made it all the way through. I think I've made it consistently 3/4 of the way through. But I have a songwriting student right now who I had recommended that book to, and he's working through that. And I'm like, oh, this would be a good time for me to do it too. I feel like I need to get back into just writing more. And this is a good way to do that. And in a different way than I do when I'm doing like my blog writing or anything like that, where it's just a different writing muscle I'm exercising. This is much more tapping into like the creativity, the fiction writing, even though that's not what I do. But I'm interested in honing that skill as a songwriter, and potentially for my other writing too. That's the thing is it's called Songwriting Without Boundaries, but it's really meant for any kind of a writer. It's a great thing. And I got a copy for Mike. He does have one if you ever are interested in trying that out. He does have a copy.
I wrote down the name, but I'm like, that cover looks familiar, and I'm pretty sure Mike has that.
Yeah, I bought it for him for Christmas one year because I was so excited about the exercises. I was getting so much out of the experience. I thought he might too because he does so much writing.
It's interesting, like, and the thing that I like about writing lyrics is that it translates to creative writing and writing long form and writing like poems and all that. So there's just so much like crossover there. That's really cool.
Yeah, I was recently listening to an interview with David Epstein. He wrote a book called Range. He's a science writer. And he was talking about taking a creative writing class and how that's helped his nonfiction writing. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I think I also had that in the back of my mind as I was picking up this book to work on it again. It all helps.
I think that's like, it's a really, really good point. And like circling back to me with the acting classes, my hope is that will help me in my professional life and in my artistic life too, and I think there's such value to the arts for not just like artistic expression, but there are things that you can take, learnings that you can take from the creative arts that can be applied to whatever you are doing in your professional life, even if it isn't really creative at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people will forget that sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's very much the argument behind his book Range, where he's talking about how people who go wide and generalize and dabble in different things can really combine those experiences into something that is uniquely their own.
Yeah.
And it's like giving yourself different ingredients to work with.
Mm.
And the thing I appreciate, so I had this moment this past week where I just felt so much appreciation for my voice. I was just doing my vocal exercises, and I don't know, I just had this moment where I almost just sat in the acknowledgement that I've come so far. Like my voice is something I've really had to fight for. and I've really worked hard for it. And I'm at a place now where my relationship with it is so much better. And just there's a confidence I have in it. Even as I'm continuing to, get better and better, there's sort of a degree of confidence I have in where my voice is at right now, and a sort of ease with which I'm able to sing that I know I was overcome with this swell of appreciation for my voice. By extension, for everybody who's helped me with my voice. I've, had incredible influences vocally, and yeah, that was just a fun little moment there where I got to, and it's easy for us, we've talked about this before, to get so wrapped up in constantly moving ahead and trying to be better and be better and better. And so to have this very organic experience of appreciation for where I'm at right now just felt really nice. And it's something I've been thinking about since then. Where can I maybe manufacture that a bit more in my life? Those moments of appreciation for where I am now, deliberately, rather than just kind of waiting for them to happen.
It's a tricky thing because you need to have an awareness of where you were, and for me anyways, it can be really hard for me to remember back 10 years ago even, so I think there needs to be a kind of a combo practice of like appreciating where you are, but you also need to remember to think back to like where was I, and really try to remember.
Yeah, like to measure just how far you've traveled, because we always travel in these very small steps because that's the only way you can.
Yeah.
But they feel so small day to day, but looking back, like being able to trace back growth is pretty incredible, which I think is one of the things I so enjoy about journaling, about having my voice recorded now. I've been tracking demos for well over a decade since I started writing songs, and I haven't gone back to listen to one of those really early ones, but sometimes I'll pull up even a recording from a few years ago and I can hear the difference. And it's staggering, and it doesn't feel like it was that much of a transformation. In some ways, yeah, because I have a very obvious external measure of this song I've been working on was at one point really challenging to sing, and now it's very easy for me. Or I could hit this note before, but now I hit it with way more confidence, way more ease, way more relaxation. So there are things like that I am aware of, but to the degree that my voice has improved sonically, like in terms of just being able to listen to it and hear its evolution, it's so easy to forget.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I measure growth, I'm looking at kind of like, where was I at this time last year? Like that's the farthest I kind of go back, which is not great, because there's, sometimes a lot can happen in a year, but sometimes not much happens, or you might even regress in some ways too, absolutely. Right? So yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So that kind of ties into the topic for today, which is acceptance and managing expectations, which is, like I said, something I've been thinking a lot about lately as I'm on this journey to be kinder to myself. And I'm looking for very practical ways to do that, because it's very easy to, say, oh, I know I need to be kind to myself. I know I need to be a better friend to myself. I have to take care of myself. But the question of what that looks like in practice is a little bit foggier. And so I'm trying to find ways for myself to make it more tactile, more something I can actually apply. And one of the things I've been doing is, really playing with my routine so that it allows me to operate more from how I actually am each day, rather than expecting myself to be this intensely performing version of myself that I just can't be, or I can be sometimes, but it's so rare. It really wasn't serving me. So I've made some adjustments that have been super, super freeing. So here's I'll do a quick rundown, because this is not really the point of the conversation to talk about my routine, but I have a chunk of about 3 hours where I do music. That's the first thing I do. And then I have a break where I have breakfast. And then I have a chunk of about 2 hours where I do just other kinds of work. So that could be writing, that could be lesson prep, could be anything related to my music business that is not the music part or the teaching part. Then I have a few hours off to do my workout and my shower and my lunch and reading and all that. And then I teach. And then that's kind of my day. And it's also pretty flexible too. So this is where the managing expectations comes in. So something I've been struggling with as well that I've talked about before is insomnia. And, I think I've probably expressed a lot of frustration around it before because it's not something I can plan for. I don't know what sets it off. I sort of have some suspicions about what might help it, but ultimately it just kind of happens randomly. So it's this thing I cannot control that really tends to throw off my day. So what I'm doing now, because I had a couple of bouts of insomnia this past week. So what I can do now is I can say, okay, I lost a couple hours of sleep last night, 2 or 3, because I woke up and I couldn't get back to sleep. So my expectations now changed for what I'm able to accomplish today because I know I'm tired. I know I don't operate well when I'm tired. And so I can say, I'm not going to try to push myself through the day and just make myself feel more tired. I'm going to take this version of me and just do what I can. So I'll take myself through the music work because that I'm usually still okay for. First thing in the morning, I still have enough energy. I'm okay. So I'll do that. I'll have breakfast. And then I assess. I go, well, I had this thing planned to work on today. And sometimes it's non-negotiable. I have something that has to get done. If I have a lesson that evening and I have a last thing I have to prepare for, I do it. But I look for any way I can move things around to give myself some more space. I can either work on something that's maybe a little less cognitively demanding, or I can work on something that's a little bit more for me. Maybe I do something that is centered around reading a little bit more. Maybe I just read something for fun. Maybe I just lay on the couch for 20 minutes if that's what I need. So just giving myself a little bit of that flex time where I can, because teaching is, I'm not going to be like, I'm just going to lay on the couch here while you're, here for your lesson. There's obviously things, as is the case for everybody, where you can't move around it, you can't negotiate it. And I have a responsibility to my students and I want to show up as best I can. So I also don't want to expend all my energy the first part of the day and then I teach them in the evenings and I'm just burnt out. So it's also about managing my energy so that I'm giving my attention and my energy to the places where it's most valuable, or it's most important to me, which is my music stuff ultimately, and then my teaching. And then the other stuff is important as well, but it's a little bit more flexible.
Right.
And this has been super helpful. And this is where the acceptance part ties in, where I'm really learning to accept the things about myself that I was previously trying to fix. So again, to bring it back to the insomnia thing, I was recognizing this was an issue I was having, and immediately my brain was like, oh, that's a problem to solve. This is something I have to fix.
Yeah.
But and maybe it's something I can find a solution to at some point, but maybe not. Maybe it's always something I'm going to deal with to some degree or another. And the best thing I can do is just accept it and work with it rather than fighting against it and feeling like I have this broken thing about me that I have to fix. It's a pretty common thing. I'm not alone in that. And I feel like just this one small bit of acceptance has lifted a weight off my shoulders. Because now I'm also not going to bed at night anxious because I might wake up and not be able to get back to sleep. And so I think that also in itself is probably helping me sleep better. I went one full week where I didn't have any issues, and it just was this past week for whatever reason. So that got me thinking, where else in my life can I accept things about myself that I had been trying to fix? And I have this is like a very frivolous example, but I was thinking about my hair is a really good example. So my hair normally, if I let it air dry, it's like 1/3 wavy, 1/3 curly, and 1/3 just a mess.
That's like me now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been the bane of my existence from the time I was probably like 13 years old when I got to the age where I started caring about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was so desperate because this is the 2000s, right? This is like, think about the kind of pop stars who were out there with their perfectly straight hair.
That was the heavy tans, bleach blonde hair, straight, right? That was like, yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, being a 13-year-old girl in this world, I was looking at them and looking at myself and like, well, I'm falling short here. And it was horrible. I would blow dry my hair, but it never looked right. And so I'd try to get I'd try to use straighteners, but I didn't always have a straightener. So it's been this point of misery in my life for years. And I went through a period, like I flip flop a lot, where I go through periods where I'm like, you know what, my hair is what it is. It's going to do what it's going to do. But it doesn't look right. And so then I straighten it and it doesn't look right because I'm just destroying my hair. Like, it's just not, it just doesn't look great when it's straight either. So it's got me back into the cycle of thinking like, maybe that's something, maybe I don't have to fix it. Maybe my hair isn't broken. Maybe the way it is fine. And what I have to do instead of trying to make it something it's not is I have to learn how to work with it. And so what I have to do is find resources to figure out what products do I need? How do I deal with hair like mine? And I think it's kind of like having a plant where different plants have to be taken care of differently. You can't water all the plants exactly the same way because some of them need less water, some need more sunlight, some need less, so I think trying to discover how do I best take care of my hair might be the best thing. Again, a very frivolous example. It was just something I've been thinking about in terms of like accepting these things about myself that I can't change and maybe working with it. And maybe that'll be better. Maybe for the first time in my life, I can actually be happy with my hair because I'm actually taking care of it on its own terms.
So okay, now I know this is not the point of the conversation, but are you telling me that you've always had wavy hair?
Mm-hmm. Have you never seen it?
No, I've only ever seen you with straight hair. And this is making me very excited because I love wavy hair. And I think I was telling you, with me, my hair's always been straight. And over the past couple of years, it's gone like frizzy and weird. And I've realized it's because my hair is becoming naturally wavy. And there's a whole other way of treating wavy hair than straight hair. Yeah. So anyways, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I want you to embrace the wave.
Yeah. And I do. So I'm saying this, but I'm also reserving the right to change my mind because I've flip-flopped on this so many times, but I think I'm at a point where I want to put in the work to actually research what I have to do. I probably am going to have to go find a hairstylist. Yeah.
Because it's going to be hours. Like wavy hair, I've spent so much time looking into it, and yeah, anyways.
Yeah, I trust I'll figure it out. If this becomes something I decide I want to hyperfixate on, it's going to get taken care of. It just might take a while, but I'm fine with that. I don't mind when things take the time they take. Which actually brings us again back to the idea of managing expectations, and like how long things take is a really, really good example.
Well, acceptance comes into there too, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really, and that's sort of where I'm at. I'm like, it's this dance between acceptance and managing expectations and how much better that makes the day-to-day experience of doing things. So I'm not planning my day expecting to finish everything. And I'm also no longer going through my life feeling like I'm going to get to a point where everything is done. It's just never going to happen. And so I'm trying to be more present each day and just enjoying the things I'm doing. So it's still a balance because I am still somebody who loves to plan and likes to have an idea of where I'm going. But it feels much more like something that is just kind of operating in the background. It's sort of like maybe having like an antivirus thing on your computer. It kind of runs and it's there when you need it. So when I need to evaluate what I'm working towards, what I'm working on at any given time, it's there. But my day-to-day is not feeling this frantic, hyper productivity where I'm trying to just like do everything and I'm moving and I'm not really enjoying what I'm doing in the moment because I'm so intent on getting to the next thing and just trying to move really quickly through my day to the point where I've had days in the past where I get to the end of the day and like, what did I do today? I was just going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. So it's one of the things I like about being able to give myself these breaks in between because I'm still working, basically 7 to 8 hours a day of like intense work, but it's spread out with these big chunks. So I have a chance to catch my breath, to do a shutdown, to think about, what's coming up next, to sort of, close these loops in between. So, just structuring a day so that it's more enjoyable for me has been really nice as well because I know the stuff I'm working on takes a long time. Writing an album takes a long time. Building a business takes a long time. And it's just each day I'm just doing something based on wherever I'm at for that day and whatever I have on my plate. And then I get to the end of the day and I'm like, I'm happy with what I did. And then the next day it's the same thing. So I'm finding I'm just feeling a lot better. And we'll see. I mean, Lord knows I've had many moments of this where I'm like, I think I've got it figured out. And then it's, it has not been figured out. But I feel pretty confident about this because it feels like a bigger shift, like a bigger framework shift for me.
I think even that, like you just said, like you go through moments where you feel like you have it all figured out. I've been through those moments all the time. And right there's some acceptance that needs to happen there. Mm-hmm. And in fact, like I would, and I'll think about this myself too, next time I have that kind of like, oh, I figured it all out, to actually challenge myself and to reject that idea, because that isn't acceptance, right?
Yeah.
Like to make that kind of declaration, like, yes, I figured it out, I fixed it. It's like, that's not acceptance. That runs counter to acceptance. Acceptance is acknowledging that there will always be curveballs. There will always be things about yourself and the way that you work or whatever that you don't like and that you want to fix. And I think you have to accept that that's always just going to be part of it. Like you're never going to arrive. We've had that conversation before too, right? There's never going to be that point of arrival. Because I think the problem is like when we think like we've figured it out, inevitably we're going to get to a point where we're off the wagon or whatever. And then we're going to feel terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great that you bring that up, because I was thinking about that, because I was like, okay, if I'm really managing my expectation needs to be that
this is going to hit
a slump. I'm going to hit a slump again. And so that's exactly what I've been thinking about. And so I'm like preparing for it. And I was thinking, so like as a good example, I had this week last week where I felt amazing. I was like the happiest I've been in so long, and I was productive. I felt great. To look at my daily tracking, it was just like the numbers were through the roof. And I was like, I know that's not going to last. My expectation now is knowing that I'm going to hit some days where I don't feel as great. Again, for one reason or another. Some of that's just, hormonal fluctuations.
Yes.
Some of that's insomnia if that hits me. Some of that's just, it is just, you sometimes have a bad day. But I know that when I hit that is also not going to be how I feel forever. It's just, this is a temporary feeling. I'm just going to accept it and again, work with it. If I'm having a day where I feel really bad, I'm going to ask myself, well, what can I do to feel better? And that already is helping me to feel less pressure to like keep everything at this super high level, because I know it's just not going to be there. It just can't always be that way. And so when those moments inevitably arise, there's just a lot more grace that I give myself and this gentleness. It's not this feeling like, oh, I'm broken, I'm failing again, I'm not measuring up. This is just how I operate like a human being. And so there needs to be that acceptance that I am always just this is basically how I'm going to operate. And there are certain things that I know that I do that do help my baseline in terms of how I feel, in terms of my mood, my focus, my productivity, all of that. And I do the best I can with what I control. So here again, we come into the idea at the core of Stoicism, which is to focus on what you can control and to accept the stuff that you can't, to just let that stuff be. And so I'm really doubling down on the stuff I can control. And that's just freed up so much mental space and it's cleared out so much emotional turmoil for me just in the past, I'd say probably month that I've been kind of dabbling in this way of thinking and living.
It's interesting too, because like, when I think about like just focus on the things you can control, it's interesting because I'd argue that the things you can control only exist in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have this kind of illusion that, if we plan and all of that stuff, we can control the things in the future but you can only kind of control what you're in the right now, because there's so many factors that come into play that you can't anticipate until you're actually experiencing them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it is just doing the next right thing.
Yeah. And, I've had to learn this with work because we all go through phases where we're on, right? And we're able to like we're able to get through that list effortlessly, it seems like.
Yeah.
And then we'll go through a week or whatever where we're off or our brain is foggy for whatever reason, and it's more of a struggle. And I've had to really learn how to look at my day, and on days where I'm off, it's like, what here can be pushed?
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't all need to get done today. So what is it that I can take off? And adjusting.
Yeah.
To accommodate the fact that it might take me twice as long to get through a task as it usually does. It took me a while to learn that was okay to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an experience this past week doing one of my workouts. This was on Tuesday. And generally, once I get started with a workout, even if I'm sort of tired going into it, once I get started, like, I'm good to go. If I struggle through my workout, I know that that's a sign that I'm really tired, that there's really something up. And what I've been doing with this workout program that I'm working through right now is I do the main workout, which is about 45 to 50 minutes. And then I usually tack on like a 20 to 30 minute cardio after. And the old version of me would have been like, I don't care how tired you are, you're going to do that cardio after because that's what you do. You do that because otherwise you're going to feel like a trash human being. But operating from this new place, this much less stubborn place, I was able to say, okay, well, let's get to the end of this workout. If I have to pause, I'll pause. Like, I'll take my time and get through it. I'm just going to skip the extra add-on. I'm just going to give myself a little bit more space to maybe take it a bit easier today. And then, took the rest of the day way easier. And I'd had a bunch of work planned. And again, it was like what you said, like, can I push this off? I'm like, yeah, I can. Like, I'm in control of what I do. So I'm gonna actually push this off because I know I'm just gonna be fighting through it. I'm gonna be exhausted. I'd rather give myself a little bit of time I ended up just doing some reading and listen to music and all of that. And it was amazing because the next day I felt amazing. I felt great. And I was able to do a full workout and the add-on and everything. And I got all the work done and I taught, and it was great. And I don't think that would have been possible if I had just like fought through and done the extra workout and done all that extra work. I would have been so burnt out trying to make it through the rest of the week. So just making that decision in that day impacted the whole rest of my week. It was way better.
It's interesting. Circling back to, you're saying you do your workout and you usually do that half hour of cardio. And if you don't do it, you feel like a trash human being. It's interesting because right there, it's like you base your value as a human on what you do.
Yes.
And I think the shift that people can look at making is, don't assess your value on what you do, assess your value on how you treat yourself, or assess your value on how you feel.
Yes.
And I think if you can think in those terms a bit more, that will help you prioritize yourself.
Yes, you're exactly right. And that has been the shift that I've had to make. And that has been really helpful for me because I used to use exercising as a tool to validate myself rather than a tool to take care of myself. And so in that moment, I did have to have that conversation with myself where I asked, what's the point of the exercising? And ultimately it's to take care of myself. It is something I also genuinely enjoy doing, but I don't enjoy it when I'm exhausted like that. And I don't enjoy feeling exhausted after and like I can't do anything else. And so I had to learn how to be flexible enough to change what I was doing to help take care of myself in that moment. And it looked different than what I had planned or what I expected, but that's okay because this is the idea of values. One of my values is curiosity. So being able to get curious about it. Well, what do I need right now? This thing that I usually really enjoy and get a lot of value out of is not serving me in this moment. What can I do instead?
Yeah.
So I cut it short, went and had a shower, had a nice lunch, that was what I needed in that moment. So it's asking yourself what you need rather than telling yourself what you need.
Yeah, and that can be an extremely challenging thing to do too, because I've had this situation before where it's like I'm in a really down place. It's like, okay, what do I need right now? What will make me feel good? And it can be very, very hard to figure that out. Yeah. And sometimes the things that I feel like I need or that I feel will make me feel better, like watching TV, aren't actually the things that will make me feel better. But it's not something that just clicks on, like it takes time, I think for you, well, it did for me anyways, for me to really like clue into my actual needs. And I think that is because I'm fairly disconnected from myself and from my body and from how I feel. Like I don't pay attention to that. I'm not very mindful of that. And that factors into my eating too, right? Like what foods, if you were to ask me what foods make your body feel good, I would not be able to tell you.
Right.
So I'm not clued in that way. I know what foods are supposed to be good for me because someone else has told me, or because, that in and of itself is a learning journey for people. And you need a lot of patience to kind of go on that journey, because it's not. And this is where it becomes really hard, like this acceptance and self-care and self-love and adjusting expectations, all that stuff is a challenging thing to do, because you do need to have a level of self-awareness beyond just like an awareness of your own thoughts. I'm very aware and tuned into my own thoughts, but you need to have like a bodily awareness that not everyone has. And that's something that needs to be cultivated.
Yeah, 100%, which is something I'm working on right now, which is doing stuff more for my body, connecting to my heart, to my nervous system and all of that, and trying to tap into how I feel versus what I think. Because I'm also somebody who thinks a lot. I'm always in my head. I'm like, a lot of what goes on in your head is being influenced by what's going on in your body. So if you can actually address your body first, a lot of the thoughts will be a little bit easier to sift through.
And I think our thoughts are I hold my thoughts as truth, but that is so far from the truth, because our thoughts are so shaped by what other people have told us about ourselves, or what we've told ourselves about ourselves, or, it's kind of a complicated way of, like, if you're relying solely on your thoughts to get to a place of wellness, that is a very challenging road. And I think it might actually make more sense to tune into the way the body feels and let that be the driving force behind what you do to achieve wellness, because I think that's more accurate.
I think you're 100% right. Yeah. Yeah, we sort of lionize the mind. And like, I think the mind is a wonderful thing, but you want to have that mind, body, spirit connection. They all need to be working together.
Yeah.
You can't really harness the full power of the mind if your body is not well. And that could be just not well in the sense that you're just not connected to it. That's the thing, is we spend our lives ignoring what our bodies are telling us. And then we wonder why we feel so awful and why it's so hard, to connect to it. Because it's like, if you have, somebody you were friends with, and then you just like stop talking to them or you stop listening to them, they're not going to want to be your friend anymore. If you want to win your way back into that person's life, you have to kind of fight for it. And I sort of feel like I've had to do that for myself, because I don't trust myself. So as I'm trying to go, hey, what are you really feeling right now? How are you doing? I'm like, I don't think you mean it. I don't think you're serious. It's like, fool me once, so I think it takes some time to like earn your own trust, so that your body can trust that you are going to listen to it. And not just be like, okay, this is what you're saying, but I know better. My brain knows better.
Yeah.
Or this person told me that this is how this is supposed to work. So I'm gonna do that because they wear a suit and they talk fancy, and that is good enough for me.
I had a couple thoughts on that. One, it's also not surprising that we don't really tune into our own body, because we've been trained from a very young age not to. It's not natural to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, right? But that's what you do in school. Mm-hmm. You have your breaks to run around, but you're largely sitting. And that's what we continue to do in adulthood, right? Well, for those who have office jobs, and there's lots of people who don't have office jobs, but there's like a normalization of that disconnect, because that disconnect is necessary for humans to be doing what we need to do to participate in this weird society that we're in, right?
Yeah.
Like also like sitting and just consuming media. Like, so we've been trained. That disconnect has been, I don't think intentionally, but we've been conditioned to sort of ignore. And, thinking back, like in school, like those kids who were active or moving around a lot or fidgeting, like they always got reprimanded. Mm-hmm. Like they always got in trouble, which is so sad, because it's like they're just moving because that's what their body is telling them to do, like And then the other thought that I had, and this was, I've been reading a book right now about intuitive eating, which has been really, really interesting. And as I was reading that, I had this thought of like visualizing my body and like the signals that my body gives me as like a kid asking for something. And I got really sad because I was thinking like, and I just took a moment, I paused in the mid chapter and just took a moment to kind of, I was like, what am I feeling like right now? Like, am I hungry? What do I feel like eating? Or am I thirsty? And I realized in that moment, I'm like, I'm very thirsty. I think my brain is telling me I'm hungry, but I'm actually really thirsty. And I had this like realization that like my body has just been here asking for things. And I've just been blatantly ignoring it or giving it the opposite of what it wants and needs. And I'm like, imagine a little kid like asking, like, can I please have some water? And you're like, no, eat this food instead. Like, how sad that is that we treat ourselves that way. And like we neglect ourselves to that extent. It's tragic. And so this is what I'm going to try to do is just imagine myself as like a little kid asking for things. And like, would you say no to a kid who's like, I really need to take a nap? Would you be like, no, you can't. You have to stay up.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's a terrible thing to do.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring that up because I had a similar sort of thought this past week as I was thinking, I can't remember what it was I was thinking about, but the idea of like thinking of like, how would I get a kid to do this thing? It's like, you're not going to yell at them. You're not going to call them stupid. You're not going to treat them like that. Hopefully you don't. You know, how would you invite a kid to like want to do this thing or something? So it's along the same lines. So it's just interesting that both had that same sort of idea of like, how would you treat a kid? Because it's interesting how we have to think about either a child or like a child version of ourselves. It's like we can't think of ourselves there yet. Hopefully we get to a point where you can see them as one and the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that interesting where we're so disconnected, we have to project a different version in order to then take care of them. It's like, I have to imagine I'm a child to take care of myself. I can't do it as an adult because I don't need to be taken care of. I'm the one who should be taking care of other people.
I think it's just the easier road to feeling compassion. And I think we see this in society, right? Like adults who make poor decisions, we're much more critical of them.
Yes.
Versus children who make poor decisions. Because there's at some point, we stop seeing all the factors that came into play in their lives that led them to making these poor decisions, right? At some point, those no longer are an excuse. Mm-hmm. And so, but with kids, we're quicker to be like, well, like, look at the family environment they're in, or look at, and we factor in those things that are happening around them. We're just instinctually more compassionate for children. And I'm sure there's like an evolutionary reason for that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
So I think it's just the easier, it's a shortcut to feeling compassion for yourself. Just picture yourself as a kid or. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely very effective. I mean, I've read multiple books where that's something they do. Like imagine yourself as a child.
Yeah.
And, the idea of like healing childhood trauma and healing your inner child. Like I think a lot of that is definitely an important part of the journey because so much of our patterns are a result of the stuff we didn't receive as a child that we needed, or the stuff we learned that was really harmful or whatever. So we're always trying to learn how to take care of ourselves and our younger selves in the way that we weren't taken care of. And by extension, I think that does make it easier for us to know how to take care of ourselves now because we're, as much as we grow up, we're still very much the same people. And we're shaped, as we talked about in a recent episode, we're shaped by our experiences.
Yes. Interesting. I've always found that fascinating that we're so much of our shaping, like if you're to kind of give weight to the different age groups, it's like our younger years hold a lot more weight in terms of shaping us as a human than those later years. And it's funny because having worked in like early childhood education, just like how those years people don't seem to understand how important those years are for childhood development. Mm-hmm. But those are the years that continue to like there's stuff that I'm still working through that like from when I was 6 or 7 or whatever, right? Like, or even younger than that. I mean, I remember in kindergarten feeling like I wasn't good enough and I was dumb. And it's like, so I was 4 or 5 years old and I'm continuing with those struggles. Like where did that come from? And why did I get that feeling? And was there some sort of, like, if I had a different kind of, if I was in a different educational setting, would I have not experienced those feelings and all of that, And it's just like, I wish we invested more resources into those very early years of a person's life.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully now with what we know, that is sort of the change that's happening. There is a recognition that, the stuff that happens really could really screw you up down the line. So better be a little bit more thoughtful. And then, recognizing that there is a degree, and this is, I guess, where I'm also having to come to a level of acceptance. I'm trying to accept people for where they were at that point. So I can very clearly see the failing of like my school system is a really obvious one. Yeah. But also sort of like learning to go, well, okay, I've got some healing to do because of those experiences, but can I do it in a way that doesn't leave me feeling, anger and hatred towards people who were, probably just doing the best they could at the time, dealing with their own stuff from childhood. Like it all carries. It's the idea of, that like inherited trauma or whatever the term is. Yeah, it's hopefully a realm where there will be some improvement going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tricky one. Because it's a good point. Like in order to, like you have to forgive, holding on to anger is not going to help you move through things, I don't think.
And it doesn't change what happened.
No, and it's not necessarily fair to, because as you said, like everyone has their own stuff, their own story, their own issues, and it's just being human is just really strange, right? And like the way family systems are set up are challenging because I think we're more susceptible with that kind of nuclear family model. We're more susceptible to be scarred in childhood because there's essentially two people raising us, right? And like so we're going to inherit some sort of trauma or some sort of baggage based on whatever they went through and whatever their issues are, and it's messy.
And then it's about extending that to people now. So I think it's easier to bridge the gap by going backwards and being able to accept what happened in the past and learn to forgive and move past it. And then to try to take that and do that now. So if you have somebody in your life who is sort of constantly letting you down or who will always say something that makes you feel bad or whatever it is, you can then manage your expectations, and instead of expecting them to change or wanting them to change or hoping they'll change, you can accept where they are. And then from there, you can make a decision. So if you want to make the choice to distance yourself from somebody, that is a choice, and that is a great way to take care of yourself in some cases. And in other cases, you learn how to manage your reactions to other people doing or saying unkind things, because there is that understanding that it's coming from a place of probably their own pain. It's like this quote from Socrates where people don't do wrong on purpose. If they knew better, they would do better. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, like when you're in those situations where you're actively experiencing hurt that is being caused by someone else's actions or whatever, I think setting the boundary for yourself first so that you're taken care of and your needs are taken care of and you're safe. I think once you set that boundary and you've secured your own psychological, emotional, whatever safety, I think that's when you can start working at forgiving or letting go.
Yeah.
But you need to assert that boundary first, right? Because you need to make yourself safe before you can start forgiving someone. Because that is, I think, in my opinion anyways, like forgiveness is a gift that you're giving to someone else, but you need to give the gift of safety to yourself first.
100%.
Love or comfort or whatever it is, right? That other person is infringing on.
Yeah. Yeah, because you want to forgive, but you don't want to forget. If this person is somebody who's harmful to you, you want to have those, definitely, like you said, those boundaries established. So that, here are the boundaries. I'm going to make sure I uphold them so I'm taking care of myself. So you're not forgiving at the expense of yourself or feeling like you have to forgive for somebody. You know, it's that people pleasing that so many of us fall into. You know, you are extending forgiveness out of the generosity that comes from taking care of yourself.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's an important distinction to make.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like we could probably talk more about this, but I think we got a good chunk covered for today. We are going to be talking about self-love in the next episode, which does dovetail nicely with this and some of what we talked about today. So we'll probably maybe bring up some of these ideas again, especially as far as like boundaries and stuff like that. But I think we're good, unless you have any final thoughts.
Nope.
So I thought, in the interest of us, we talked about recently, you know, the idea of not talking about the stuff you're working on and just doing it and then putting it out when it's done. I thought it might be, and I should have mentioned this at the top before we started recording, but I forgot. I thought it might be interesting for us, instead of doing like a what are we doing in the next couple of weeks or few weeks or whatever, if we could each like set an intention for the next week, because that's a little bit more broad.
Yeah,
or if you have another idea, that's fine with me too. I just thought maybe changing it up.
No, intention setting is good. Okay, you go first.
Yeah. You know, my intention is just to accept the things I cannot change, to have courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
I like that one. And my intention is to get 9 hours of sleep every night.
Oh, there you go. That's a good chunk of sleep.
Yeah, well, I read this thing that women need like 9 to 10 hours of sleep, or 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night. Like they need more sleep than men. And then I was reading that and I realized, like, for the past several months, I've been getting maybe like 6-7 hours of sleep because I've been staying up too late. And so I've just recently tried to get, like, last week I was trying for 8 hours. And this week I'm going to try for 9 to see how I feel.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to hear about how that goes for you. I'm on a better sleep routine right now where I'm in bed at 10 and I'm getting up at 6, and it's been a lot better. But I'm curious about that. I wonder, I'm curious to hear how you do on 9 hours.
Yeah.
Because it might be something I try at some point.
I think it'll be good for me because that's how much sleep I used to get. Like up until fairly recently, it was like I needed at least 8 or 9 hours. But I've been depriving myself of that for a while. So I think it'll feel like I'm getting back to normal.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You can send questions and comments to us at streamofartpodcast@gmail.com. We have links to our Instagram handles in the show notes. We have a Discord you can join. We have a playlist that you can listen to. So we have our October playlist, and we'll be also posting up the November playlist. So in the next episode, we'll be going over the songs from the October playlist. So you've got some time to listen to that. And any other links to our websites and newsletters and all of that, that's all in the description in the show notes. So feel free to check that out. And we will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.